Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into two fascinating Oscar years, 2013 and 2023.
A whole decade apart. Held at the Dolby Theater, but were the movies similar?
Let's find out. 2013 had a lot of historical dramas, like Lincoln. 12 nominations.
Wow, that's a lot. Maybe it shows how people were feeling back then, looking back at Siguri.
Zero Dark 30 also got nominated that year. It was about finding Osama bin Laden.
Right. People were really trying to understand those events, weren't they?
And we can't forget musicals. Les Miserables was huge. Hugh Jackman, Anne Hathaway.
She won her first Oscar for that one, right? A powerful performance for sure.
It was. But the Best Picture winner was Argo, a thriller based on a true story about the CIA rescuing people from Iran.
Argo was everywhere that year. It just captured what everyone was talking about, that kind of post-9/11 world.
It did. And remember, Kwamazani Wallace, she got nominated for Best Actress.
For Beasts of the Southern Wild. She was only 9 years old. The youngest nominee ever.
And a foreign film, Amour, got nominated for Best Picture too. Not something you see every year.
It's interesting to see how the Academy was recognizing different kinds of stories.
Now fast forward to 2023. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once was the big winner. 7 Oscars.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Michelle Yeoh. It really broke the mold.
A multiverse movie. So different from 2013's winners.
Definitely. But still resonated with people. Shows how tastes change, maybe.
Right. And Top Gun Maverick got a Best Picture nomination. A sequel.
Not your typical Oscar movie, is it?
Not really. But it was a huge hit. Maybe the lines are blurring between blockbuster and Oscar-worthy.
Maybe. And Brendan Fraser, Best Actor for The Whale. What a comeback.
He was incredible. So emotional. People really connected with his story.
And then The Banshees of Inisherin. So darkly funny, but also really moving.
With great actors, too. Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson.
And RRR, that song, Natu Natu, it was everywhere.
Winning Best Original Song was huge for Indian cinema.
A real global moment at the Oscars.
So looking back, what stands out to you? How did movies change in those 10 years?
Well, genres, for sure. 2013 had all those historical dramas and musicals.
Right, and 2023 was more sci-fi, action, dark comedies.
Big shift. And even the historical dramas felt different.
Like you said, All Quiet on the Western Front was much more intense than, say, Lincoln.
Yeah, maybe a more realistic way of looking at history.
And diversity. Did we see progress?
I think so. We had Kwamazani Wallace in 2013, but then Michelle Yeoh winning in 2023.
And RRR.
Yeah.
Definitely more representation.
Yeah, but there's always more to do, right? To make things truly equal.
And some familiar names popped up in both years. Quentin Tarantino, nominated for original screenplay both times.
For Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he has a style, that's for sure.
And Roger Deakins, cinematography nominations. Skyfall in 2013.
And Empire of Light in 2023. Totally different movies, but both beautiful to look at.
He really knows how to use the camera to tell a story. So, from historical stories to multiverses, what does it all tell us about how our taste has changed?
It's a big question, isn't it? Maybe we're looking for more escape these days. Or maybe for stories that reflect our own anxieties.
Or maybe both. Escapism and something deeper, too.
I think that's a good point. The movies we connect with often say something about us, don't they?
They do. Let's dig a little deeper into some specific movies.
I'm ready. What did you think about Life of Pi? That was visually stunning.
Oh, absolutely. The tiger, the ocean, everything. And it won Best Director for Ang Lee.
He did a fantastic job. Did it feel too technical to you at all, or was the story still there?
No, not at all. The technology just made the story even stronger.
That's good. Sometimes it can take over,
Right. And then we had Les Miserables. So much singing.
Did it live up to the hype for you?
I think it depended on who you asked. Some people loved it. Some thought it was a little over the top.
The music is pretty powerful, though.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't love the movie, those songs stick with you.
That's true. Now, jumping to 2023, what about All Quiet on the Western Front? 4 Oscars.
Best international feature, too. It was so intense.
I'm beautifully shot, even though it was about such a horrific subject.
It really showed the impact of war. And Avatar, The Way of Water, another visual feast.
James Cameron knows how to use those special effects.
But again, did it have that human element for you?
It did. Underneath all the spectacle, there was a story about family and connection.
Yeah, that's important. It can't just be about the visuals.
Now let's talk about some actors. Daniel Day-Lewis, his 3rd Best Actor Oscar for Lincoln.
He was amazing, wasn't he?
Completely transformed. You could tell he put so much work into that role.
And on the other end of the spectrum, Brendan Fraser's comeback in The Whale.
He deserved that Oscar. So raw, so emotional.
It felt like more than just acting, you know?
Right, like he was pouring his heart into it.
And then the leading ladies. Jennifer Lawrence, Best Actress for Silver Linings Playbook.
She was great. It was a different kind of romantic comedy, wasn't it?
Definitely. More realistic, maybe.
And then Michelle Yeoh. A historic win for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It's great to see her get that recognition after such a long career.
Let's talk about a couple more Best Picture nominees. In 2013, Zero Dark 30 was really controversial.
About the hunt for bin Laden. It definitely sparked some debate.
It did. It made people think about the tough choices involved in that kind of situation.
And then The Fabelmans in 2023. Steven Spielberg's own story.
It was so personal and really showed how movies have always been part of his life.
It makes you see his other films differently, doesn't it?
Yeah. Knowing where his passion comes from, it's interesting to see how those two movies took such different approaches to storytelling.
One about a major historical event, the other about a personal journey.
But both nominated for Best Picture. It shows the range of what the Academy considers.
Okay, let's talk documentaries. In 2013, Searching for Sugar Man won. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. The musician who was famous in South Africa without even knowing it.
Such a great story. And it showed how music can connect people across cultures.
It did. And in 2023, Navalny won. About the Russian opposition leader.
That was so intense. It felt like a thriller, even though it was real life.
It was. It showed how powerful documentaries can be to shine a light on important issues.
Makes you realize how much is happening in the world that we don't even know about.
All right, let's finish up with a couple of short films. In 2013, Curfew won. A really emotional story about a man considering suicide.
Wow. Powerful stuff. And it was only 19 minutes long.
I know. So much emotion packed into such a short time. And in 2023, An Irish Goodbye won.
About two brothers coming together after their mother dies.
A really sweet story with some great acting.
It showed that you don't need a lot of time to tell a great story, do you?
Not at all. So we've seen a lot of different kinds of films from both 2013 and 2023.
A lot of variety.
And we're just getting started. What are your thoughts so far? What stood out to you?
I think it's amazing how much can change in a decade.
What do you mean?
Well, the kinds of stories, the technology, the way we look at history, it's all reflected in these movies, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, and I think it's just going to get more interesting as we move into part 2 of this deep dive.
I'm ready for it. Let's not forget about those amazing visuals. Remember Life of Pi?
Oh, yeah. Won a bunch of awards, including Best Director for Ang Lee.
4 Oscars. The tiger, the ocean. Incredible. It wasn't just a good story, it was a beautiful movie.
I felt like I was on that boat with him.
Ang Lee really knew how to use those effects to make you feel part of the story.
And speaking of amazing visuals, Avatar, The Way of Water in 2023.
James Cameron pushing those boundaries again. Did you like that one?
It was a visual spectacle, that's for sure.
But sometimes those big effects movies, they lose the heart of the story, you know?
I don't think Avatar did that. It was still about family, about connection, even with all the blue people and weird creatures.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk actors.
Daniel Day-Lewis, wow. 3 Best Actor Oscars. Lincoln was incredible.
He just disappears into his roles, doesn't he?
Totally. You forget you're watching an actor.
And then you have Brendan Fraser winning for The Whale. Such a different kind of performance.
But equally powerful. So much emotion.
He really deserved that win.
It felt like he was putting so much of himself into that role. Like it meant something to him, personally.
And speaking of great actresses, Jennifer Lawrence in Silver Linings Playbook.
She was so good in that. It wasn't your typical love story.
Right. A little more messy, more real, maybe.
And then in 2023, Michelle Yeoh's win for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
A historic win. It was about time, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And what a performance.
She can do it all. Action, comedy, drama.
Let's talk about a couple more Best Picture nominees. Zero Dark 30 in 2013.
About the hunt for bin Laden. Really intense.
And controversial, too. Some people felt it was too violent or that it glorified what happened.
It definitely made you think, didn't it?
It did. About the choices people have to make in those situations. And then The Fabelmans in 2023. Steven Spielberg looking back at his own life.
I thought that was really sweet. And you could see how much his childhood influenced his movies.
Right. It all makes sense now. 2 very different movies, both nominated for Best Picture.
Shows you how many different kinds of stories can connect with people.
Let's move on to documentaries. Searching for Sugar Man, that was a gem.
Oh, I loved that one. Such a feel-good story.
A musician who didn't even know he was famous. And then Navalny in 2023.
That was gripping. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
It's crazy to think that stuff is happening in the real world.
It is. Documentaries can be so powerful to show us what's going on. Okay, what about some short films? Remember Curfew from 2013?
The one about the guy and his niece? Yeah, that was heavy.
So much emotion packed into such a short time.
It's amazing how much story you can tell in 20 minutes if it's done well.
And An Irish Goodbye from 2023. That was really sweet.
Two brothers dealing with their grief in different ways.
But ultimately, they come together.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Different genres, different styles, different lengths.
What's your biggest takeaway so far? What surprised you the most?
You know, I'm just struck by how much variety there is in these Oscar-nominated films.
Yeah, and how much things can change in just 10 years.
The kinds of stories being told, the technology being used, it's fascinating.
And we're only halfway through. I can't wait to see what else we uncover.
Me too. Buckle up, everyone. We're moving into part 3. Thinking about those Best Picture winners. Argo in 2013, it felt very much of its time, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. That whole rescuing Americans from Iran, that idea of American ingenuity.
Right. And then 10 years later, it's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Such a different vibe.
A multiverse movie with a Chinese-American family at the center.
Yeah. It shows how much things have changed, even in just a decade.
What else do you see as big differences between those 2 years?
Well, 2013 had a lot of those historical dramas. Lincoln, Zero Dark 30.
Django Unchained, too. Tarantino going back in time.
Right. And there were historical films in 2023, but they felt different.
Like All Quiet on the Western Front. It was brutal.
Not romanticizing war at all.
Maybe that shows how our view of history is changing, becoming less idealistic.
It's possible. What else? Oh, sci-fi and fantasy became much bigger in 2023.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, obviously. And Avatar. The Way of Water was huge.
Even Top Gun, Maverick, had those over-the-top action sequences, almost like a superhero movie.
Maybe it's escapism. People want to see something that takes them away from reality for a bit.
Makes sense. All right, before we wrap things up, let's get some movie recommendations from you.
Okay. From 2013, I'd recommend The Hunt. It's a Danish film, really intense.
It's about what?
It's about a man who gets falsely accused of child abuse.
Oh, wow.
It shows how quickly a lie can spread and how hard it is to prove your innocence.
Sounds like a tough watch, but also really important.
And for 2023, I'd say check out After Sun.
I've heard good things about that one. What's it about?
It's about a father and daughter on vacation looking back on their memories.
Sounds sweet.
It is, but it also has this undercurrent of sadness. You know, it makes you think about how we remember the past and how our relationships change over time.
Okay, both films added to the list. Thanks for those.
Anytime. So we've looked at 2 different Oscar years, a decade apart. What have we learned?
Well, we've seen how much Hollywood changes, but also how some things stay the same.
The desire for good stories, the power of great acting.
Right. And how movies reflect the time they were made in. Whether it's historical dramas, sci-fi adventures, or personal stories, they all tell us something about who we are.
And who we want to be, maybe. It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It has. Thanks for diving into these movies with me.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, keep watching those great films, both old and new.
There's a whole world of stories out there waiting to be discovered.
Until next time.